Okay, so in the next three videos I want to draw the total utility function and the marginal utility function, and then in another one the production function, the S-shaped production function and the marginal product function, and in a third video total cost and marginal cost. So our total utility function was 16 times the square root of x, and we said this looks something like this curve here, and then we derived the marginal utility as 8 over the square root of x, and that should give us something like this. So let's do that in Excel, and so let's switch to Excel. And what I will do is, you can see I have also activated my keystroke, so you can see a little bit what I'm doing here. And what's important to say or to mention at this point is I have a Windows laptop, so if you have a Mac it's a little bit different. I think what is typically Control on a Windows is Command on a Mac. So anyhow, so I want to produce a graph where we have something like this. Okay, let me draw that quickly here again. So, okay, got it. Okay, so we had a utility function. We said total utility is equal to 16 times the square root of x, and the marginal utility we derived as 8 over the square root of x. Well, it's supposed to be an x here, and we should get a graph that looks something like this. So we have here x and then the total utility. The total utility should look something like this, and the marginal utility, I put it in the same graph, should look something like this. Okay, and so we have to create a graph where we have on the x-axis x, and you see I have activated my keystroke, so you can see what I'm pressing here. So if I press, for example, shift, you should see it. If I press X and combine it, you should see the 2, or backspace, but it's a lowercase x. And now what I want to do is I want to create an x-axis from, let's say, 0 to 10. But I want to have a step value of 0.1, so that we have small increments. So now what I do is I highlight the entire column now below the 0, and I do that by pressing Shift, Control, arrow down, and then you can see how that highlights everything. Now I have to go up again, and then there is something called I think it's Home, Fill. You go to Fill Series, and then I want to fill a column, linearly. I want the step value not to be 1 but 0.1, and I want to stop at 10, and that creates a column in Excel that goes from 0 to 10. Okay, so now we add the function for the total utility, and this was equal to 16 times the square root of x. But the x is here, so I'll just pull it up from the first column. Enter. And now I want to copy down that formula, and you can do that by double-clicking on that lower square in the lower right corner. And that copies down the formula. Okay, before I draw it, I also do the marginal utility, and we said the marginal utility is equal to 8 divided by the square root of x, this one here. And again, the x is in the first column. And now when I press enter, I will get an error message because you cannot divide something by 0. You cannot divide 8 by 0 because the square root of 0 is 0. But that's fine, we'll just blank it out later. But I copy it also down and I'll just blank that out. Or more better in Excel is you would say this number is NA, number n/a. Okay, so now let's see what the total utility function looks like. That's pretty straightforward in Excel. You just highlight the first and the second column. And then we go to insert, and then there's something in Excel called recommended charts, which is very convenient. And you can see I like the second one, and we could make it nicer, of course. We could say I want on the x-axis always a step value of 10, and then we will see only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we can click on Format Axis, and then first thing is you want everything on the tick marks. Then you can change the interval. Instead of 1, do it 10. And then we have to do the labels. I gotta get out of the way here quickly. You want to have the labels also with an interval of 10. And then it looks a little bit nicer. And of course we could also play around with vertical axes. Okay, we have the axis title, and this would be the total utility. Total utility, and I like grid lines too, so let's add the vertical grid line. Okay, so that's good enough. Next we do the marginal utility, and I make it a little bit smaller so that the marginal utility can go underneath. So I highlight again, Shift, Control, arrow down, I highlight the first column. Now I need to highlight the third column. I press Control, I click into marginal utility. Now I press Control Shift arrow down. So now I highlight only the first and the third column. And now we should see a downward sloping curve for the marginal utility. So we go again to Insert, Recommended Chart, and we get indeed a downward sloping curve. We can format it again similar to the first one if we want to. So we say x-axis, format axis, on tick marks. We want the tick marks to have 10, a space of 10, and the interval unit is again 10. And if we want again the grid lines, we can add the vertical, and we can add the axis title, and that would be now the marginal utility. The marginal utility. Okay. So, and the point is of this graph now that if we look at the total utility, we see that, for example, down here the slope is very high, and that's represented here by a high value. Here the slope is much less, and it is also here corresponding to a much lower value. And this would reflect the law of diminishing marginal utility. This is how you would do it in Excel. So in the next video we do the same thing for the SJ production function. But I'll just stop here for now, and I'll see you in the next video.